this is kind of the background for the 5 sessions, all right? And the 5 sessions, and my little cursor goes around here. This is the essential wisdom part. And I'm maybe repeating myself, but the to me, this is so exciting. It's so exhilarating that there is a way out of this mess in my mind. And it's not top-down changes. It's not bottom-up changes. It's about facilitating the, the system to transform itself. And that's what we talked about last time, is this, the first element is facilitation. Um, and we also talked last time about asking you for your wish for society. And I didn't really, I was so wrapped up with the technology of it all. It was hard for me to figure out what was happening. But I presented a monster wish that to me is about how do we really transform society. And you probably can't read it right now. In fact, I think I have it here written somewhere, but yeah, okay. Let's see if it works. Monster wish, there it is. That all the people, somehow we get all the people to be involved, to facing this monster issue, each one at a time, creatively together, where we achieve breakthrough progress. This is a little bit like wishing for all that you get to wish all the time. You know, you get one wish and you say, oh, I want my one wish, I'm going to use it for wishing that I get all the wishes. And somehow you secretly got all the wishes. That's what I feel like we're doing here, is that if you and I, if somehow we could facilitate all the people to come together and face these problems creatively and collaboratively together, gosh, that alone is sort of the solution. Uh, Even if we didn't come up with any answers, we got everybody working together. We got everybody being a part of a creative endeavor where we're listening and being in relationship to one another. But if we could come to unity about what's going on and what to do, well, heck, that's that's like governance. That's democracy. That's what's supposed to happen in democracy. If all the people that come together and reach unity about what to do and face these problems, that's what's missing from our society. We're not doing that. We have a system and we turn it over to these politicians and we give them we've structured an argument for them, and we've structured us to be voting, which is individual judgments that we add up. There's no conversation. There's no we the people conversation here. So if you, and the ability to facilitate that we the people conversation is not as hard as it seems. So that's kind of where we are. So that this we the people conversation, I know lots of people who think that, oh, gee, we need collective consciousness. And the way we get that is through individual consciousness. We go out and educate everybody. Well, I'd like to point out that I mean, we've been doing that thousands of years. I'm not sure it does work. It's a little slow, but it's not going to be in time. The other strategy is to go the opposite. If you and I can facilitate this whole system conversation into society at the global level, at the national level, well, then we are raising everybody's individual consciousness in that way. We don't have to go through the education process. We just, and so the essential wisdom bit is how do we, one is we're talking facilitation, but today we want to talk about choice creating, because there is a quality of thinking. In my mind, every facilitator out there who says I'm a facilitator has in mind a particular kind of thinking, that they're going to help this group in front of them become more deliberative, or they're going to become more creative, or they're going to all vision together or something. And what I'm wanting to highlight here today is that the critical piece that's missing is this we the people piece, where we're solving this problem together We're facing some big impossible seeming problem and we're reaching unity, and we're doing it in a way that's exciting for people, that we're listening to one another, and at the end of it, we reach unity. We look at one another and we say, oh, thank God you had such a different viewpoint than I did, because we would never have gotten to unity. If you have a different view than me, that gives us the chance for a breakthrough. That gives us a chance for a creative leap. And that's what we're trying to take advantage of here, is that one is the ability to facilitate, and the other is this quality of thinking, choice creating. I call it choice creating because to me it's like an opposite to decision making. You and I live in a world of decision making that was structured to be a decision process. And voting is one aspect of it, where we use our judgment. And the word decision means, D means away, and decision means cut. You cut away. So it's a judging process that we cut away all the bad options. But it's very confusing to people because we don't have a word for the part that, for the kind of thinking that isn't cutting away, the kind of thinking where we're being creative and we're collaborative and we're coming up with answers through breakthroughs. That's not a decision. It's not a cutting away. It's a creative leap, and I'm calling it a choice. So there's a distinction between choice and decision making and choice creating. So we have a small enough group we can talk about some of these things, but so I'm thinking that with those kinds of understandings, there are certain action steps we can take to deliver on this monster wish. And the benefits are so over the top that I'm embarrassed to talk about it. And in fact, this seminar is arising because of this embarrassment, because when people talk, when you see on the national media about some problem, if you say, oh, I know how to solution for that, all we need to do is do these steps. Well, it doesn't work. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. They all walk away, upset that you have such a simplistic viewpoint. But actually, and the same thing's true within the monster issues in the global society, that if we could, a few of us could facilitate the whole system to be in that spirit of choice creating and to come to unity around a breakthrough solution, just the process itself is a big win. And of course, the answers are a big win. And of course, we're already there in terms of, we don't have to sell the idea. Everybody co-created it. And the reason why we're not doing that, and I have another chart that it's still messy, but basically it's the other chart is that why we get these problems in the first place. We get these problems in the first place because our system creates them. In other words, if you have a system where it's a decision-making process, where there's a rules of the game, if you will, then you get people playing the game. You get competition. And so you have the Republicans and the Democrats, they're not going to share their points. They're trying to win. Why? Because we set it up that way. I say we. How do we get out of the game? How do we, like, instead of playing basketball, why don't we all go out for a beer and visit and look at some of these problems we've got? That kind of talking and thinking is denied to us because we're in a system that structures this competitive decision process. And I hope I'm making sense. I'm going to turn you loose into small groups in a little bit, and it's okay to, I'm going to stop the share and maybe go back to the big picture of us. Is this maybe just say, is this making sense to you? Are you with me when I talk like this? It's
Yeah,
kind
it
of strange.
definitely does.
What?
It definitely does.
Okay,
Makes
great.
sense.
All right. Well, it's hard because, and that's, if we can look at it enough, I'm going to give you what I call the curse of consciousness. Because if you can see that this actually can work, then you're kind of screwed. You know, you're screwed because now you have this responsibility like I do. And I'm a wreck. I'm a nervous wreck because I have a responsibility for society. Nobody should give anybody that responsibility. But honestly, that's what I'm trying to do to you. I want you to see that this is possible, it's solvable, and for you to say, oh my goodness, I've only got this much left in my life and my capability. How do I help people get this? You know, how do I bring this forward? Okay, so there's the monster wish and the essential wisdom piece. And here, oh yeah, this is where I was going to start. I wanted to start with this idea of what's the usual response when you have an impossible to solve problem. What does people normally do? And if it's impossible, what happens?
Ignore it.
Ignore it. Of course you do. What can you do? You can't do anything. You're stuck. You can't do anything. So you're better off. And this is what we've taught ourselves. And this is, I use the serenity prayer example. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, somehow, where did I get off with this idea? Okay, does creativity exist or not? Does it exist? I mean, raise your hand if you think human creativity exists. Okay, yeah. So at some point, we're stuck with the fact that impossible is not really impossible. And I don't want you to stress out and just keep working that way all the time. I'm just saying that 2.5% of the time, we should be working on what's impossible. We should be working on the big issues that seem impossible to solve. Otherwise, we're completely contained, aren't we? We're completely contained inside this box that of doing only what's possible. And I'm sorry, the world isn't going to go forward that way. And we can have a good life, I guess, and get through it. But it's turning it over, the problems over to the next generation. So I'm in my little picture of this, I have my way of drawing this. What I wanted to draw is just a simple game of a box that we are in. We're in a box. I mean, think about it. In the United States, anyway, the founders of this country, this is in the 18th century, said, here's how we're going to think. Here's how we're going to talk. Here's the kinds of decisions we're going to make. We're going to make decisions. We're going to have a competitive process. And then they had a wonderful conversation and they set up a wonderful system for their time. And now you and I live inside that box and we have these problems that seem impossible to solve. But we're trying to solve them all from within the box. we're running down, we're painting the street with says Black Lives Matter, and we go down and we're trying to influence the elected representatives, and we're trying to do everything we can within that box to solve the problem. And somebody just needs to blow a whistle. You get a referee whistle and blow it and say, everybody out of the box, come on, let's all gather and just see what we got going here. You all okay about trashing the planet? Does that work for you? You want to make any changes? I mean, there is a different kind of conversation out there that's begging to happen. It's begging to happen. And I'm just saying that that conversation is not dialogue. It's not discussion. It's not negotiation. It's what I'm calling it. It's not decision making. I'm calling it choice creating. So we have our normal, that's 97.5% of the time, we have that normal conversation, decision making. We live inside the box. We only work on what you can do, blah, blah, blah. But then shift gears, 2.5%, we step out of the box. We say, okay, these are the real problems. What do we do? How do we solve it? And if you and I can facilitate that conversation of all of us, we are in a new system. That is a new system. That's one where the constitutional system is secondary, not primary. You and I have changed the definition of real life. We have changed human nature because we're now facilitating a completely different context for people to live inside of. Right? I mean, to me, it's like walking, like I know Jan's son, one of their sons played a lot of basketball. It's like going into a basketball game. I play basketball, okay? And it's like, when you're in the game, and if we had a 20-point lead, somebody comes to me and says, hey, Jim, you gotta sacrifice some of your points here. You gotta give them up to this other team. These guys they're not doing as well as you. I'm not gonna do that. We're playing a game. Right? In other words, a lot of these left blue team members are trying to pretend like we're just people. No, we're not people. We're people in a system that where its competition has been structured for us, and that's how everything works. But we want to get out of it and be real people. How do we do that? Well, that takes a little bit of facilitation. If a few of us can facilitate that stepping out, but it's kind of crazy to just walk into the middle of the game and try and pretend that we're all people and we're having a deep conversation. No, we're playing a game here. So the distribution of wealth in the country and in the world, I mean, if we ever look at it seriously, it's going to be terrifying. It's terrifying to see that distribution of wealth. And are those people going to share? No, because they're playing a game. They're trying to win. The whole name of the game is to get as many points as you can. I see Christina Henry's coming on board. She's in Germany. So, but she knows a little, she's seen me rail about this stuff before. So I'm just saying that there is this crack in the bell. I mean, I've never heard Leonard Cohen's song. But there is a way out, and it has to do with facilitating people to step out of that box and becoming real and being in a real conversation. And the real conversation doesn't have a name. It's like the Native Americans or the tribal people, they do everything they know about this quality of talking. They know about it and they structure it. They have little piece, they pass the peace pipe, or they have a kiva, they build a kiva and they all go into the kiva, whatever. They know that we have to somehow get to that quality of thinking. And even the Catholic Church has ex cathedra communication. Okay, there is this quality of thinking, quality of talking, quality of being that we want. Now, what the founders did, they did a great job. They set up a system that isn't that. It was fine because people were independent. There was a huge continent. There was lots of room. You could there wasn't much government anyway. You could have this competition be the basis, but it can't be the basis going forward. It can't be the basis for the next phase of life. We are interdependent. Interdependent. We're not independent like they assume. We are interdependent. We can't do competition. We have to do conversation. And it has to be a certain kind of conversation, a certain quality of conversation where we're respectful and we're listening and we're trusting what's coming up from ourselves, and there's a space to hold it, and we're self-reflecting. That conversation, it turns out, doesn't have a name. And so I'm calling it something. I'm calling it I'm taking decision making, saying that's one thing. It's not, and I'm saying, okay, what we want is choice creating. We want to facilitate an ongoing, whole system, choice creating conversation. At whatever level, at the local level, at the national level, at the global level. Now, there's only a few of us to get that. There's really brilliant people, really brilliant people doing great work. But honestly, I don't see how that can work unless someone, us maybe, facilitates that whole system conversation so that we can all act together. We can act cohesively. We can act with the right motivation. All right, maybe we can get a law passed so that everybody wants to think in terms of the laws and influencing elected officials, and that's what they call real change. Well, real change doesn't change anybody's motivation. We're still having this competition. Profits are still number one. Maybe we change the incentives a little bit, but that's not real change. Real change is when we get out of this whole deal where we're trying to compete for self-interest, and we step into the world of recognizing what's really happening and trying to figure out how to deal with it in the real way, and what we really want, and what's a way that works for everybody. And that whole conversation, I'm giving it a name. I'm calling it choice creating, and I'm wanting to show a way to facilitate that. So we saw the power of facilitation. We're looking at the power of choice creating just today. And next time we'll talk about dynamic facilitation, and notice that, oh my God, that is one way to get choice creating. There's lots of ways. You and I step into choice creating all the time in the local setting a lot, in church or, just different settings, in meetings, especially with friends. You can find that space. Or, and this is the big or, there's another time when choice creating comes out. And that's when everything falls apart and we realize we're all going to die unless we just skip it. And we have a crisis. We have to pull together and make everything work. And oh my goodness, now we have this miracle that happens. People can come together and they can rise to the occasion, and they start listening to one another. So a lot of environmentalists, for instance, are saying, well, gee, I think nothing's going to happen until the things get so bad that we finally come together and start working. Well, what is the change that happened? All that does is facilitate a shift to choice creating, in my mind. So we somehow got to choice creating through the crisis. So that's what I'm talking about with choice creating, and
Jim,
Yeah, yeah, please. Thanks.
just to highlight that point, in a crisis, what happens, say it's all the power goes out, it's a flood or a storm or whatever, all of a sudden everybody's equal. There's no, everybody's got the same problems, and yeah, there might be people that step up into a leadership role, but the fact is, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I'll do this, and somebody needs to do that, and everybody just instantly begins to work together, and then until things start to heal, and then the powers that be climb back into control.
Yes, and the crisis is, it's on us right now. We're there. It's just that we're not ready to acknowledge that it's there, right? I mean, science is telling us that we're not really sustainable. So when does that shift happen? When do people go, oh my goodness, this is really not happening. This is really bad. We have to shift. So that's what the dynamic facilitation relies on. That. It relies on that. We are going to face the issues that are in crisis that we're not really ready to face yet. So this is a way to and use that crisis energy to shift things forward. So I thought maybe I'd give you a chance to talk in small groups about this, and basically the ideas, or what I was going to ask, the question is, what's your experience with choice creating? And then we can talk about really anything in there, but I've talked a lot about a lot of stuff here, so maybe you'll have more different things to challenge yourselves with. But one more quote. This is one of the people that I just love, if I can get it. Yeah. This is one of the people that I really should help me in my life. Oh, this is my definition, or this is a statement about choice creating. To face a monster issue creatively and collaboratively with heart and mind, seeking what's best for all, where shifts and breakthroughs spark unity and new clarity. But here's what I was looking for. This is Oz Swallow. He was a South African consultant. He says, your quality, I remember him just rattling this off, and I wrote it down. I thought it was so cool. He says, your qualities cannot be discovered until you're tested by a crisis. So if you find yourself in an awful mess, that allows you to become great. Indeed, this is the only process by which greatness comes about. I love that. So, all right. So, David, can you put people in the small groups of like 4? Well, I just wanted you to taste a little bit about choice creating, and I got that spirit. It was fun to hear a few stories about it, because we all know that exists. We all know that capability, that human capability of us coming together and thinking, to sharing the problem and contributing our genius. It does exist, and it arises at different times, I think, and we need that. We need to have a way to facilitate that, make sure that is happening in our lives. Instead, of course, I'm watching the news, maybe you are too. It's like, you can't, they're all trapped inside a system and they're playing the rules, and every so often they get a little bit ahead on the rules, like in the Senate, for instance, there's 50 versus 50, and then now they have a tiebreaker, except one person wants to blah blah blah. It's just they're all playing in the rules and getting ahead, and then of course the pendulum swings and the next group takes over next time, and it isn't really talking. It isn't really thinking. It isn't really working on the problems we have. And even if, in my mind, even if you could come up with the perfect set of policy, just absolutely perfect. It's not going to do it. Corporations are still out there maximizing profits. They don't really care. I mean, about what we should all be in a state of caring about this issue together. So, um, anyway, does anybody want to say something to the group about your experience that we should hear? We should all hear. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to share with you is about. Oh, good. All right. Now I have this. I don't want to lose it, but. Okay, you should be able to see. All right. So one of the things that that I notice is that, for instance, the political scientists of the world are all interested in improving our situation. And they come back to this term deliberation. They want deliberative democracy. And it's really, really good, these improvements that they're having. Right now, there's something called the Citizens Assembly. And so the people in, I guess it's mostly in Great Britain, but it's a lot of places that are rebelling, Extinction Rebellion. They don't want, they're trying to rebel about climate change. And they're raising all sorts of anger and getting real animated about climate change. And what they're boiling down and advocating for is a citizens' assembly process, which is about deliberation. So rather than arguing and debating, we should be looking at the options and deliberating, weighing the options and understanding the options. Now, of course, that was the intent of the founders of the United States in the beginning, that there would be this deliberative process. And so there's this rational emphasis to try and make things more deliberative so that we get better decision making. I hope you are beginning to see from the way I'm describing this that isn't going to do it. The whole Extinction Rebellion thing, which is great, I know they feel better for demonstrating in the streets. And I know I'm so glad that they're making this action and bringing awareness and so forth. But deliberation as a quality of thinking is making the decision-making world better. But it's not the shift to choice creating. It's not where we're all stepping out of the box and we're trying to figure out together what's really needed and how do we really do it, and being creative together and coming to unity. But if I go to a conference of people who are into deliberation, they will say, oh, well, we have new ideas. We sometimes have a breakthrough. But what they're really talking about is something that happened in the bathroom. It didn't happen because of the process. It happened, they gathered at a conference there together, and then they went off and talked in the evening drinking, booze or something, and a couple people came up and had. I'm wanting to point out that I'm really, really thinking this word choice creating, giving it a word to this quality of thinking is really important, because what's happening now is that every camp out here, the problem solving camp, the consensus building camp, the dialogue camp, they all claim choice creating, even though they're actually, when you see what they're describing of how to proceed is something else. Like dialogue, for instance, you will hear people say we need to get together and make it come up with answers. We need to all have a dialogue and come up with answers. Well, if you read the definition of a dialogue, there is no answers in a dialogue, no collective answers. It's a conversation where it's transformational. People transform. I love dialogue. I'm in a dialogue tomorrow, but it's not choice creating where we come up with a group answer. We face some problem and come up with a group answer. That's not what we do in dialogue. Dialogue is an individual thing where we are talking in a heartfelt way, and we're doing inquiry instead of advocacy. And I mean, there's a definition of dialogue, but the way people use the term dialogue, they pretend that choice creating's in there, and it's not. And the same thing with consensus building, and the same thing with deliberation, and the same thing with problem solving. The choice creating is a separate thing that is the missing ingredient. And it's mush, the way it's going. You know, our conversation is mush because everybody's kind of assuming this magical quality is in their, is in their negotiation. They're going to write a book about transformational negotiation, and they're not talking about negotiation. They're talking about choice creating, but they've relabeled it and made it. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that I think this magic sauce that's needed if we're going to have a real we the people conversation, if we're going to do the monster wish, we need to hold on to the distinctions of what these ways of thinking are. You might call it becoming a connoisseur of thinking, being a connoisseur of the different thinking approaches that are out there. So I'd see if I can share with you. For instance, this is a video. I hope you can see it. Really, really good man. Really, really great man. They're doing, how do we change the system? But here we go.
How do we start a really informed, non-rhetorical discussion nationwide about how do we change the system? Project is to try to launch a big national dialogue. We've got the president of last year's president of the American Political Science Association agreeing that we face a systemic problem. Time to have a debate about it. We had a big meeting at Harvard recently. President of the Sociological Association also saying we face a system problem. Time to have a national discussion of what does that mean? How do we go forward?
So he's dynamite. We need a we the people conversation, though, like the one he describes. But I don't know how to pause. Maybe that's what that is. But you see there's a loss of the distinctions, and it's just throwing words at the quality that we need to have. And what I'm recommending among us all in this second phase of our seminar and the importance of choice creating is that we hang on to this word choice creating and keep noticing that is what is needed, not this other stuff, not the discussion. We're not seeking a discussion, a national discussion. We're not seeking a national debate. We're not seeking a national dialogue. We're seeking a national choice creating. That's what we need. And so and if we can find it, if we can hold on to that little bit there, then, oh my goodness, doors open. We have this amazing potential for change. Now, the thing that's cool is that we don't have to run and teach everybody this. We don't have to teach people this. We just have to facilitate the conversation so that choice creating is what naturally occurs. So there's just a few of us there. No, Christina, yes, speak.
Can you hear me without the headset? Oh, great. I think it was Artie just saying in our small group that she experienced modeling is so helpful, and that's what you are saying. We need to facilitate, and we need to like help have the conversations. And maybe Artie, is that similar to what you were referring to with the video saying like I showed children what a conversation. Look at the conversation, have a look at it, and then
Right.
there's a link.
No, you got it. You got it perfectly. Yeah, I think you got it intuitively, cognitively, in all the ways. Good. I'm happy you got it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your story, and maybe you want to share it at this point. Jim, does that interrupt you a lot?
Sure, no, that's
It does,
But I'd love to hear it.
It's actually a step to choice making and
Choice creating.
or choice creating.
Yes.
I began by feeling there was I wanted the classroom that I was teaching at the time, which happened to be first grade, but I taught all the different grades, and I taught college and taught adults and teachers and so forth. So it works, if you can't believe how it works almost the exact same way with first graders, that it works with a group of average age 30-year-olds. It's pretty amazing. But what happens is if we release a group and we say, go to it, discuss it, solve this problem, whatever, they don't know what to do next. So what happens is what I wanted the kids to talk more about the book. I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted them to talk about it. And the only way I was having them do that was that I asked the questions. So then I figured some ways to get them to ask the questions in a large group with me facilitating again. But I wanted them to be able to do it in smaller groups without me facilitating. So what I did was I tried different methods to get them to do that. And each time it went nowhere because it was really hard for them without a facilitator. There might be one person who would step in and kind of take over, but then again, that's not doing it together. And so I realized what they needed was to know what it looked like. They needed a model. And I got videos. And I showed it to them and I said, what's happening that's making this conversation work? You can't believe what they came up with. They look at how can you tell that they're listening? Well, they look at each other, they nod their heads, they shake their head no or yes. They ask questions of the person who spoke. They named all these things, and all the while they're naming, I'm writing them down. And when they got done, I said, we think you can do this? Make it look like that. And unbelievable, they can do it. They can do it in kindergarten. They can do it. And if they do this, if they're shown how to do this and modeled it, they can do it forever. But without the models, even in college, they always waited for a facilitator. So sometime the facilitator has to, so it's like you, Jim, you go in and you help them up, but you can't be there forever. So someday you have to let go and somebody else is going to have to lead the group, or they're going to have to do it together. And I'm a collaborative person. I like the togetherness. So anyway, it works like a charm.
That's great. Yeah. We haven't talked about this, but there's different, I was going to save this for next time, but let me just kind of do it. I found out how to do my page. Okay, can you see my page? Great.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So to me, it's like we talked about facilitation last time as being sparking the self-organizing change. So the kids do it themselves. They can just do it by themselves. And the facilitator, that's what facilitation is sparking, is some way, and it can be a person, it can be, you know, I think like when we play basketball, I think the rules of having pivot foot is a facilitative idea too. But the level of self-organizing is depends, and I don't know if I can do this from memory, but it seems to me that like if you're teaching, you want the students to get it by themselves. You want, but you already know what the answer is. You know, maybe you already do, and you're not, maybe not in your case, but I mean, if you're dealing with a 7-year-old or a 2-year-old and you're trying to help them know what 7 + 3 is, you know, you might want to say, you're not going to say it's 10. You're just not going to do that. You're going to say, oh, I've got 3 balls and I've got 7 balls. How many balls do I have? I mean, you're doing whatever you can do so that that child gets it, so that there's a self-organizing that happens in the brain or in the mind, and they get it themselves. And the same thing's true with dialogue or deliberation or whatever. But each layer of facilitating is a higher level, and I'll have the chart ready for you next time, is a higher level of self-organization, where this, at first it's just in the brain, and then it's kind of in the heart. And what I'm trying to talk about with choice creating is when we do choice creating in the face of a some kind of crisis, it's transformational to me, and it's transformational to the group, and it's transformational to the system. It's like there are levels of self-organizing that happen. One level is when my mind does it, and then like one way that we would do it maybe would be like you describe the vision of what you want to have happen, and so you take everybody and you have them describe their vision, and you describe what is happening now, and you describe the vision, and then everybody leaves, but somehow or other they go out into the world and the vision starts to happen. Be the change you wish to see. It self-organizes. I'm not doing it consciously, but there's a self-organizing that happens. So one kind of facilitation, for instance, would be to help people articulate the vision and to articulate the current state. But choice creating is different than that. Choice creating is where we are just stewing in the mess of it all, and somehow or other we all have these shifts and breakthroughs where we know what to do. And that is so I'm thinking of this facilitation being this large level of possibilities where self-organizing happens, and you know, and people become a master of it at different levels. Like teachers will learn how to be facilitative, or leaders in industry will learn how to be facilitative. But to me, the level that we're talking about that we need right now is this level of solving impossible to solve problems. And how do we come to this place where we're maximizing the prospect of breaks and shifts and shifts and breakthroughs? And that's kind of the piece that I want to draw more distinctions, and that's what I'm doing, and building off your story already about how facilitation works. And that's what you're doing, is you're facilitating in that way. So I I can't remember how that all fit together, but at one time it fit together beautifully, and maybe I'll recreate it. So, yes. And I know we're just about done, but I wanted to, I have, oh, yes. Okay. This is better when I draw it anyway, but, okay, so let me come back to that. And I'm going to stop the share and go draw that because it's more fun to draw, I guess is basically the reason. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is that here's the box that we live inside. This is the system. And the system is really a set of rules, kind of rules of the game, if you will. And inside this, this system that I call the box system is basically sets up competition and judgment. And there's another system before this one, I should have written it earlier, called the triangle, where you have this great leader, the king. And that system sets up loyalty. You need to be loyal. That's really what it boils down to. And there's a hierarchy. And I believe the Constitution, see, I wrote it, I wasn't going to talk about the triangle, and so I had to add it, and I don't have it in my room, but the Constitutional Convention was how we shifted from the triangle to the box system. And this shift changed all of us. It changed everything. And I think we'll talk about this more because we're almost out of time. What I'm proposing is that we have this box, but what we need to do is have as well a certain kind of conversation where we step out of the box for just brief moments. Like when I was working in a sawmill environment, we did an hour and a half every week where everybody would stop and they'd step back and think in the spirit of choice creating. They would face a problem and they would be facilitated dynamically, and we'll talk about that. And they would have shifts and breakthroughs, and sometimes they wouldn't know that they had shifts and breakthroughs, but they did. But what happened in this process of just having these regular meetings in an ongoing basis that were just very short, and the box was left entirely alone, what happens is that you find yourself changing into a new system. You realize we're not really in this box system anymore. We're in a different system. We're in the circle system. And in fact, we start changing the box. We need a box. It's good to have it. But we start changing it around and reshaping it because there's a we the people. There's all of us together solving these problems. And now we affect the box completely. So there's more to say about this, and I wasn't going to talk about it next time, but that's kind of where we're headed, is that the wisdom, the choice creating, this stepping out of the box and thinking in the spirit of choice creating is transformational. That's why it doesn't have a name. It scares people because it changes who I am. It changes me as well as the group. It changes me as a part of a group. It changes everything. And we'll talk more about that. But I want to stop on time today. But that's so that's why I keep harping on choice creating being this special kind of talking, not just the facilitation. The facilitation is huge, but also we'll take another step and look at choice creating and see that, oh my gosh, this is a magic sauce. This is a way we can, if we can facilitate this quality of thinking, and if we can do it at the big system level, oh my goodness, everything can change. So I think we're near the end. I hope this is as exciting or half as exciting for you as it is for me. It's very exciting that you're here giving me the chance to talk about this. Thank you for that. So
Thank you, Jim.
all right, good. Thank you. We have 2 minutes.
Love seeing all your faces.
I have a
All right.
question.
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, what is the ingredient? How would you describe the ingredient in the magic sauce that enables us to think, have a magic solution? Do you call that a power that's greater than us? I mean, what do you?
Well, it's true that this is at heart. This is a spiritual process. So, a lot of my background was with the Guild for Psychological Studies, and so I have you and I share that in the past, and Karina knows about that too. So, but yes, so there's a spiritual dimension to this. What we're doing, we are trusting what emerges. We're trusting what emerges from us and from the collective and from. But it's not just emerges like this wants. Desires. It's a deeper transpersonal presence.
And so, what is it about a crisis that helps that surface?
I think that's a way. We'll have to talk about it next time. It's a fun conversation, but I think. You have to think about evolution in general. This is really an evolutionary leap we're talking about. It's an evolutionary leap. It's what evolution does. It goes into a crisis, and then there's a new self-organization, and then it comes out as a different beast. And that's what we're entering right now, I believe.
One way to think about it is when there's a crisis, it breaks the box.
Breaks the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cocoon. Breaks the cocoon. Yeah. Cool. Well,
Breaks the trance. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
Thanks for asking the questions. This is a great sized group, isn't it, for what we're doing?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you so much, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a good week.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
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 Bye.